explicitly ordering you not to go. You risk hundreds of lives, and you risk peace in the quadrant.
If you could lower the volume of your voice, Admiral.
My God. Are you hungover, Spock?
The result of a peace treaty with the Klingon captain after a successful mission.
You got lucky.
All right, welcome back to the General Order 1 podcast, where we are discussing Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I'm your host, Scott, and as always, I'm joined by my longtime friends,
Ben and Jason.
And today, we are discussing Season 2, Episode 1, which just aired. So we are diving right in. Before we start, I wanted to talk a little bit about, I went back to Discovery because we're in like a Star Trek lull right now because everything's between seasons.
That's the desperation play right there, my friend.
I was like, I gotta go. I'm going to give it another shot. I'm going to go in with an open mind. And so I watched Season 3. And it's okay. Like, the production value is great. The costumes are great. The setting's great. Like, the CG is amazing. But, like, all of the plots are just horrible. Like, I determined halfway through it that the part of the reason I don't like it is because I have disaster fatigue after watching it. Because every single episode is a catastrophe that they barely survive.
Right.
There's no Strange New Worlds. There's no exploring. Like, everything is OMG, like the Federation is about to, be destroyed. Like, how do we barely eke by this week, right? So anyway, the point is, this isn't a Discovery podcast. So I'm watching that and I'm like, I gave it like all of Season 3 and it was okay. And I got to Season 4 and I watched the first 2 episodes and it was just abysmal. I was very disappointed. I legitimately I need a palate cleanser. So I went back and watched the Strange New Worlds pilot and I was like, oh, this is just so much better. Like, it's night and day different shows. But during my rewatch of the pilot, there was a sentence, or I guess a discussion between La'an and Pike that I think I sent you guys. I'm going to read it real quick because I think it ties into her character that we didn't pick up on the first time. And La'an tells Pike that she says, "The Gorn have a ritual. The last one, the one who survives, they send into space on a raft, like throwing a fish back, I suppose. You're not really supposed to survive. Dumb luck the King Jr. ran into me. Una was ensign on the King. She helped me find my way back home. She's the reason I joined Starfleet." So yeah. Una and La'an go way back. I mean, sounds like they were friends. If you remember in the pilot, like they meet and they're like, oh, basically long time no see. And it's never really explained any more than that. So there's 2 things that we learn from that. Number 1, that they are very good friends. And number 2, that the Gorn have like this weird like survivor ritual. Which certainly it sounds like we're going to see more of the Gorn this season, so I wonder if that will come up.
They leave one to tell the tale of the horror of the Gorn.
So that was literally like, I don't even remember, like 15 minutes into the pilot, and you don't know who any of those characters are, so it was like I just didn't pick up on it at all the first time. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting detail.
That kind of gives more explanation to like why Una so wants to help that girl get back to her family. Because
you mean La'an, not Una? Yeah.
Or La'an. That makes more sense.
I have trouble keeping their names in my head too.
I always get those 2 mixed up, Una and La'an.
Well, I guess I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. Yeah, because what's that girl's name? Anyway, so is she the last one? I guess she is. She's the one that the Gorn left alive?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I didn't... See, that's why I do this, because I learn something every time. Anyway, so that was my quick note from my brief rewatch of Season 1. The episode opens, we get a nice recap of Season 1, which you should all have watched before you're listening to this. And the episode opens with some shuttles, like a fancy CG shot of some shuttles flying around Starbase 1. We see more of those domes with trees, like that sort of agricultural habitat that they've built around this starbase.
I have to say that, I get what they're doing. This is the first episode of the season. We're going to, the captain's log was pretty dry because he's talking about, we're basically just upgrading the Enterprise. Not much action to start this season 2. So yeah, we have this whole intro scene with these shuttles like hot dogging around, like,
yeah,
for no reason at all.
There was a bunch of them too. Like it was a dozen. Yeah. It wasn't like 1 or 2 just like flyboys out flying around. It was like they were going to town. Yeah.
And this is this space dock. There's got to be a million regs on, how close you can be and
right.
clearances and air traffic control stuff. They're just like zipping all over the place and doing barrel rolls for no reason. It was great.
So Pike basically says, yeah, like you said, so the Enterprise is still in space dock there at Starbase 1, if I didn't already say it. And he says that Chief Fleet Inspector Commander Pelia and her team from Operational Support Services are running comprehensive inspections, system checks, and upgrades. So they're basically just getting the tune-up, which if you remember from season 1 is basically exactly how last season started. They were getting like OS upgrades and whatnot on the Enterprise, and then they had to leave early because they were going on who was it? It was Admiral Robert April,
yeah.
Basically came and said the same sort of thing, like, you got to go right now.
Yeah, this is a very evergreen Star Trek thing. Star Trek, the motion picture starts with them like getting their refit. Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan starts with the Enterprise getting a refit.
I had that exact same thought. Like when the shuttles are flying around, there's kind of like a slow shot of both the Starbase and the Enterprise, and it does feel very, like artistic, like the scene in the original motion picture where there's that super long shot of the Enterprise just in the space dock, just because they wanted to show off how fancy.
Every time you think they can't possibly have another camera angle they shot this from, oh yeah, they do.
Yeah. It did. It felt exactly like that. So, and Pike ends his voiceover and he says, "I sense a tension here among the brass that I can't pin down. The feeling that something is in the air." And then we see Pike on a video call with Una. So we immediately jump into the Una plotline, and he's basically trying to find her a lawyer. And she says that she can't get whoever this fancy lawyer that they want to hire. She won't answer the phone.
Yeah,
and so Pike basically says, okay, I'm going to go knock on her door. And Una's like, she's like 3 days across the galaxy from where you are. You can't just go knock on her door. And he's like, watch me.
Yeah.
So Pike is...
Can I just say I'm a little concerned because, this is an ensemble show. The original series ran into a lot of trouble just because it was the Kirk show. It was always about Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. None of the other cast really ever got to do anything. And right out of the gate here with season 2, we're just all Pike. We're not gonna, we're just all in on Pike right from the go here. And I mean, I want to see some other characters do some stuff,
Until scene 2, and then we don't see Pike for the rest of the episode. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
They basically, Pike is on screen for what, 60 seconds, maybe?
30 seconds tops. Yeah, I mean, he's gone.
Pike I will say, Pike
is not appearing in this episode.
So yeah, what do you think that is? Why do you think in like the season premiere, the most popular character?
It's an odd choice to just have Pike just nope out for almost the entirety of the first episode back.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice.
That is a good point. I didn't think about this being the pilot, and he's just like, all right, you're on your own. I'll be back. Maybe. What we see next is so Pike goes and tells Spock what he's going to do. Like, I'm going to go, real quick and head across the galaxy. I'll be back in a couple days. Spock is going to have to be acting captain, and he's kind of concerned. He was like, I don't know if you know this, but half of the crew is still on shore leave. And Pike responds, well, my first reaction is, dude, you're at space dock. Like, you're surrounded by 1 million people. Like, half of your ship systems aren't even upgraded. You can't go anywhere if you want to, really. But he's like all concerned that, he can't handle this.
Yeah, I would think he'd be all right when, there's almost guaranteed nothing's going to happen.
Right. And Pike says, ominously, you won't even have to leave space dock. And I think Spock even responds, isn't that a famous, or is that a human expression, famous last words?
Right.
So you'll never guess what happens next. They have to leave space dock. Shocking, right?
Does some emergency come up and they have to? They're the only ship that could possibly respond to it.
Well, yes. Let's talk about that.
Starfleet only has one ship at a time. You know that, right?
Right. Indeed. Especially at a starbase.
Yeah. Like, now, once in a while, they build another one if there's gonna, if they're gonna rendezvous with the Enterprise. they might build another one, but then it's never seen again.
For sure.
They
Wasn't
just
it-
recycle it, and then
They're
they build
disposable.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the distress signal from La'an that makes them like? So isn't that more of like a personal mission because it's from they realize it's from La'an and
100%. Yeah.
It is, but so yes, I
could have
get that it's
passed it on
directed
to
to them,
somebody
but
else.
right, like another ship in the fleet could go take care of this. Like,
Well, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but like Spock even tries to, right? So we see, all right, let's power through this. So we see a quick shot of Spock and M'Benga in sickbay, and M'Benga says, increased heart rate, heightened pain in the neck, jaw, and lower back. If I didn't know better, I'd say you were experiencing what we humans call stress. Like, Spock has been captain, I don't even know, like half of a day maybe, in Starbase where literally nothing has happened.
he's
and
already
so
relegated to
he's
sick
in
bay.
sick bay. Like, dude, get this guy some Xanax or something. He basically, M'Benga gives him like some weird like space loot to practice. Like, hey, and he says, don't Vulcans like music? And Spock responds, Vulcans like music for its mathematical properties. And I thought M'Benga had a good line. He was like, oh, because humans use it as a way of channeling emotion into expression, which I thought was actually a good explanation of music. But like for Spock, it's just clear, like black and white, ones and zeros. Like we just like it for the math, right?
Yeah. Well, and Spock playing, I can't remember that lute, that Vulcan lute has a name, but Spock playing that is, from the original series.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, Leonard Nimoy's Spock played the lute too. So.
Gotcha. The scene ends with Chapel walking in, and Spock's heart rate immediately goes up on like the display or whatever.
Yeah.
And Spock just walks out, like just nopes out of the scene. He's like, he can't even handle being in the same room as Chapel. Like his heart just palpitates. And I did note
Twitter.
Yeah. I did note that Chapel tells M'Benga that she wants to apply for some sort of like internship in archaeological medicine, and it's 2 months away time on Vulcan.
Yeah.
I want to know what the heck archaeological medicine is. You're like digging up ancient civilizations and studying their medicine?
I mean, or it's trying to, alien anatomy based on the fossil record or something. I mean, who knows? I don't know.
I just thought she could have been like, oh, I'm going to a conference on, DNA restructuring or something.
This is probably a totally real thing, and we're just idiots who haven't heard of it.
Yeah. And we cut to the bridge, and Ortegas is arguing with the Starbase auditor, and he's telling her, oh, the pitch and yaw controls are reversed from standard. And Ortegas is like, standard positions aren't quick enough, and I don't like getting shot, so I adjusted them.
Yeah, because you wouldn't want the ship to be as maneuverable as it can be. You would obviously set limits on that in the controls.
I also don't think like if you're a pilot, like you get to like you don't get to flip it's not like a PlayStation where you flip the controls for each pilot, do they? I don't know. Because there's going to be a day where she's not the pilot,
she
right?
Set her input sensitivity.
Yeah, right. Her mouse look is too high.
Yeah.
The next guy's going to like go to pilot the Enterprise, and they're going to do a barrel roll, and he's going to be like, what the hell's going on?
Or she's a heathen and she likes it inverted.
Yeah, there you go. I just thought it was...
Wait. You don't play inverted?
What?
Oh, no.
I'm not a lowlife.
Oh, my God. There's only one way, man. You clearly didn't grow up playing, X-Wing and shit.
Yeah. Now you're crossing franchises.
I know.
We see a different auditor who wants to install a comms update. Basically they're doing a firmware update on the comms. Uhura is really worried that will take down all comms. And the auditor is like, his line is, no offense, but we're in space dock. How many hails are you getting? Which is is just great. Like, he's like, lady, I got to do my job. I got to update this firmware.
And that's totally legit. Like, who's calling you guys? You're in space.
You have nothing to do. And she's like, well, hang on, let me set up a backup communication channel. Like, oh my God, these people are anal. Like, just let these guys do their jobs.
I know. This is a scene, because like we spent most of last season with her going like, I don't know about this whole Starfleet thing. So this is she's all in now to the point where she can't even have her comms go down in space dock for a couple of hours.
Did you happen to notice there's right there at that scene, you see Uhura like from the back looking down on her like her basically her terminal. Did you notice how crazy big and complicated her terminal was?
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
I was looking at, I mean, it's probably 4 feet wide and 2 feet tall, kind of like semicircle. There's, I mean, I don't know, like probably 300 buttons or dials on that thing. I was like, this is a crazy complicated panel. It's not just a keyboard and a mouse or whatever, you know. Like I remember watching like Wesley, like, you know, launch the Enterprise in Next Generation, and that old I mean, I don't know, it's got like maybe 30 or 40 buttons on it, but like,
yeah,
whatever Uhura had was like this crazy complicated setup. I just thought it was interesting the way they did the shot from over her shoulder, and you just see this sprawling system that
I think they're trying to make it so that it's more than just she hits the button when someone says hailing frequencies open.
Yeah. Because
you got to give a reason for that person to be there. So, you know, they've made her a linguistics expert, which, I mean, it makes sense. That's an obvious way to have this person be an expert who's, you know, you need this person on the ship because they're able to contribute to the mission, and that's the way they do it. That makes sense. Because otherwise, if it's literally just someone to open the hailing frequencies, you know, you could have Alexa do that for you.
Yeah, good point. And as we alluded to earlier, the next thing we hear, Uhura actually has to walk to Spock's quarters. He is there practicing the space loot. And he was like, couldn't you have just called me? And of course not. The comms are down. So somehow they did get a distress signal, which I assume that's probably with the backup channel that Uhura was talking about. So maybe it was a good thing that she had that channel, but that's one of those once in a million shots, right?
Yeah.
And so they get a distress signal. They're not entirely sure who it's from. I mean, they think it's from La'an. There's some, you know, question about whether or not it's a trick or not. But it's a distress signal from La'an in Khajiitar space, which is on the edge of Klingon space. And they're like, all right, we got to go right now. So Spock calls Starfleet, and he was like, we got to go. I got this, you know, distress signal. And of course, like you said, like the Enterprise, which is in mid upgrade of all of its systems, only has half of its crew. Like, he's like, we have to go right now. Like, there's no other ships they could have sent. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But Starfleet clearly will not let them go. Like, no, it's not, we don't know if this is real. You know, like, you're not in a position to go. So no, you cannot go on this distress call.
And it's, you know, it's this volatile region. It's politically sensitive. The Klingons and us have this shaky truce. We're not supposed to go there right now. We could very well start a war if we do. We're not going to do it based on this rando message you got that could be from anybody.
So
which makes total sense. It's
100%
a very sound position that Starfleet's taken here.
The message they get from La'an is, and I quote, "Dangerous situation on Khajiitar 4. Resources of Enterprise critical. Anti-Federation threat." That's what he tells Starfleet. At no point in there is it, OMG, I'm going to die if you don't get here in the next, like, you know, day.
Right.
That he's willing to drop everything and risk his entire career to, like, go on this mission, right?
Yeah.
But that's what they do. So we see, Spock has been essentially chastised by Starfleet, and he basically calls the crew together and says, hey, I want to go on this mission anyway, because we really got to go rescue La'an. Which doesn't really make any sense, because, like, it's not like Spock has any specific relationship with La'an. Like, if it was Chapel, maybe he'd be a little more impulsive to go. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that might be why they've played up that his emotions are affecting him, so that we kind of look past the fact that, yeah, he's taking some pretty irrational actions here based on not a lot of input. I mean, again, it's one thing if, like, you know, they got sent a message that it's her on screen saying, oh my God, like, you know, I'm going to die in 2 days if you guys don't come get me or something. But this really vague, like, hey, I could kind of use the Enterprise's help message seems a bit much for him to just throw everything overboard to go off and do this. So, I don't know.
I wrote, well, so Spock's line is, he's trying to convince, you know, the crew to go along with him. And he says, we must steal the Enterprise, which, number one, is a really weird phrase. Like, they're not stealing. Right. I mean, why don't they just say, what, you know, we're going to go on an unsanctioned mission? Just the word steal feels weird to me.
Right.
And it's also
And-
it clearly super illogical, and this is not at all what you expect out of Spock. So I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, it's just kind of weird.
And all of them are all in on this from go.
Yeah, right.
No one's got any reservations. No one has any questions. No one says, boy, man, yeah, I guess we got to help her, but man, we're going to be in trouble. This is going to suck. Like, they're just like, yeah, let's do it.
I mean, this is 100% a court-martialable offense, right? Dishonorable discharge. If they go on this mission and something happens, like, they're all done.
Forget something happens. If they get like halfway and go, maybe this wasn't such a good idea, and they turn around and go back, they're still all going in the brig.
Right. This is a terrible idea from
Yeah.
second number one. So the only other thing I noted about this scene is they're in, I don't even know what that room is, like essentially like their planning room or, And did you notice that as they're all sitting around, that there's like shelves in the back with a bunch of art, like with vases and flower vases, and
no, I didn't see that.
There's glass cups like in a little container, like they're going to have water or something. It's all completely loose on the shelves. Like I'm just like this ship. This thing is going to get in a fight at some point, and all of this stuff is going to go flying off the shelves. Like I always think of the Enterprise like a fishing vessel, right? Like if you're on a deep sea voyage,
everything's bolted down.
Yeah, everything is bolted down. But like they're like if you're in that room and like you get any sort of turbulence, you're literally dead because the stuff is gonna be flying all over.
Right.
And
that's they have like extra inertial dampeners in that room.
Just
yeah, there's like the engineering manual is like, look, the inertial dampers are important, like keep them up, but especially on deck 4,
we need to keep this flower vase.
Let them go down.
Yeah. We hear Pike doing the litany again. Did you notice that the intro is different this season?
Slightly different. They've tweaked it a bit.
Yeah, not a ton. There's maybe like some of the backdrops, of the Enterprise flying through or around different planets. I'd say about 40% is new. So I had to watch both of them side by side because it's mostly the same, but they did actually update it. So it's not the exact same intro from the first one. We see do we know who the Asian lady that triggers the containment leak is?
Yeah, she's been. I kind of hope they do something with her character this season. She's Ensign Mitchell. She's been around. She was in several episodes in season 1. They just haven't really given her much to do.
I did not recognize her, but
yeah, she's
goes to
been on the
engineering.
ship the whole time. And she's just kind of a background character, unfortunately.
So I wonder. I mean, is she just filling in because Hemmer's gone and they don't have a chief engineer? Maybe
no. Like she's been on the bridge crew. She's been like I don't know if she's like the navigator or what, but I'm not sure exactly. She's in like the Chekhov position from the original series. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, she's been in the chair next to Ortegas the whole time, or at least most of the time. I think they've had a couple other people do it, but it's mostly been her. Well,
this is the most action she's ever actually had. So
she's been in 5 episodes.
Okay,
but yeah, they keep giving her kind of short shrift. Anyway,
what's her name? Mitchell. So Mitchell goes to the engineering and she basically triggers essentially a fake containment leak. We hear Uhura do a shipwide voiceover to evacuate because of this containment leak. They're basically trying to get everybody off the ship so they can, quote unquote, steal the Enterprise. And right about then, we see Pelia, who was played by Carol Kane, who we know will later be the chief engineer on this season now that Hemmer is gone. She walks onto the bridge basically with a clipboard, finishing her inspection. And Spock says, "I am alarmed at your lack of concern." And Pelia responds, "At what? At the textbook signs of a warp core breach?" So clearly she knows, her way around, engineering, and she's not having anything to do.
She's not fooled for a second. By
not even 1 second.
They've done, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think? I made a note about Pelia's voice. I mean, Carol Kane. So Carol Kane kind of has a unique voice to begin with.
Yeah, and it's basically just Carol Kane's voice. She's just leaning into it a little more.
Yeah, but I made a note, like she has kind of like a kid's Russian accent. She has this weird accent.
Yeah, it's really sing-songy. And it also is kind of guttural at times too. It's always been, she's had this really unique kind of timbre to her voice. It seems like they really just kind of invented this backstory as a reason why Carol Kane sounds like Carol Kane, because it doesn't really fit with the whole Star Trek thing.
Oh, you mean the fact that she's not human? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and they keep talking about her accent. I think they just kind of created this construct around which she can sound like Carol Kane, and it's okay, and no one's going to question it. But
sure, okay.
Anyway, I don't know. I'm withholding. She wasn't on the episode much. We didn't see a whole lot of her.
Right.
She basically had like 2 scenes. That this scene we're seeing, and then another scene later in the episode towards the very end.
It is weird. Her voice is weird, like you said. She's kind of got a weird voice to begin with, and then she has like this kind of weird accent too. And it turned me off a little bit at the beginning, just because it's so different. Like it almost feels like
she seems like she's in a different show.
Yeah,
and like I said, I'll reserve judgment until we see more of her character. And I'm assuming we're going to have an episode of sorry, I don't even know what her name is.
Pelia.
Yeah. I assume we'll have like a Pelia focused episode at some point, and I'll be able to, see more. But at least for now, it's kind of like, I don't know.
They're definitely setting her character up. They give her a little bit of a story, so that comes up later. So Pelia actually realizes what's going on. She knows that this warp core breach is bogus, and she says, "Oh, can you vent ionized plasma from the warp nacelles?" And Ortegas is like, "Yeah, I can, but that's really weird." And she convinces her to do it. They do that. It freaks out the starbase. They retract the docking clamps because they think there's going to be some sort of explosion.
Yeah, they're like, "Hey, get away! You need to give us a little bit of space because you're venting plasma."
And I think at one point Pelia says that she taught at Starfleet. She taught a class on either warp cores or warp core breaches. So she not only has she been an engineer, but she also has some education in her. I assume that's why she's working at the starbase now.
Yeah.
And she says, they disconnect the docking clamps, and Pelia basically says, "Hey, I see you guys don't have a chief engineer. Since we're going to steal the Enterprise anyway, you mind if I tag along?" And her line is, "It's been 100 years since I've gone out with engines of my own." It's a long story, a really long story. And then there's kind of this pause. So they're setting up like her character a little bit. But Pelia is like just immediately on board. Like, sure, you want to commit mutiny? Like, I'm on. Like, I've never met any of these people, but why not?
Right. And then as she's leaving the bridge, and they're like, "Sure, you're in." She's leaving the bridge, and Uhura says, "Oh, I got it. I've got your accent. It's lanthanite." And she says something like, "Yep, you're right on the money," or something, and then she leaves.
As far as I'm aware, lanthanite is not a race that we've heard of before.
No, it's not.
Not anything.
So
I'm aware
I looked.
of. Yeah,
this is the first mention of it in the canon.
Okay. And that's the end of the scene, because we don't need to talk about Spock saying, "I would like the ship to go now," because that's just weird. I think we talked about. Do you guys want to talk about that again?
I'll just say that, I dunked on it in our little mini review of the trailer, and in context in the episode, it didn't go any better than I thought it would.
Yep, I agree. It's
a bad line. It doesn't make any sense that Spock would do that. He's not an idiot. He doesn't really quite understand how humans behave, but he's seen enough of it to know that he gets what they're referring to. He's seen Pike say "hit it" 1,000,000 times.
Well, it also felt long too. Like they're kind of in a hurry. Like, let's get the episode moving along.
It was. They're just trying to do a cool Spock moment. Oh, look, Spock doesn't understand humans. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, he's basically a child,
Right. But all they had to do is just have him say something really wooden and just like, whatever. And they could have done that joke without making it.
That's a good point. If he had just said, "Let's go," or even "Go now,"
Yeah.
just sort of like you said, dry and wooden. Like that would have made more sense, right?
Right.
It just felt stupid and unnecessarily drawn out. Like they were trying to make a point out of this, and it didn't need to be. Anyway,
Yeah. Anyway,
not to beat a dead horse. We already talked.
Yeah.
about
It reminded me of the line from 30 Rock when Liz says, "I want to go to there."
That would have
About
worked
as
better.
stupid.
That would have been great. It would have right.
Yeah.
That would have been 100% spot on for Spock. Yeah. The next scene, we are down on some planet, which we assume is Kajitar, because we see La'an. She is doing a drinking game with a Klingon male named Kurdach. And that totally reminded me of the scene from Indiana Jones where they're doing the drinking game and you think, oh, what's the lady's name in Indiana Jones? You think she's going to drop out and it's, the other guy ends up dropping out.
Yeah.
The Klingon basically ends up throwing up. Did you notice, I was a little nervous in this scene. Did you notice the Klingon forehead ridges looked totally different than what we're used to?
Yeah, I actually saw an article about this that, Strange New Worlds has basically abandoned the experiment that Discovery's been doing with it and just gone back to kind of the generic Klingon look.
Yeah, so I was worried when I saw those. I'm like, oh my gosh, are we going to do this? Like, where are we going with this? Can we just leave the Klingons alone? It's explained a little bit later, but I was nervous when I first saw it. Like, these Klingons, like, are they trying to make this a whole different, universe, multiverse? Anyway, a woman shows up and La'an basically says, gives her some money and says, I want a meeting with Greynax, who we learn later is basically an arms dealer on this planet. So La'an is basically trying to broker a deal on this planet for some type of arms. But again, not in any sort of danger, not in distress signal type of, oh my gosh, get the Enterprise over here and risk all your careers to help me out, right?
Right, and I don't even know what she needs the Enterprise for, because she's like, yeah, I'm trying to broker this arms deal. I know there's this group that's maybe trying to start this war, but I have no earthly idea how they're doing it or when. But I really need the Enterprise. But I don't know. I have nothing I need you to do. I'm going to go do this deal and try to get more information. And maybe you guys can help with the medical situation a little bit, as long as you're here.
I agreed. This felt really weird to me.
Yeah, she's got really no reason why she needs them there at that point. And once they show up, she doesn't have anything she's asking them to do. So I don't know why she called them, but okay.
It makes for better television if the Enterprise is there and in peril than sitting in Starbase is the only thing I can
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we need a reason for the Enterprise to show up here. I get that, but come up with one. You get to write whatever you want. Like,
yeah, as far as I understood, like she saw a bunch of people getting sick from this like photon sickness, which tells her that they have this like third party syndicate has a bunch of Federation tech, including photon torpedoes. So I guess that's supposedly a big deal, which would and she also surmises that they're trying to start the war up with the Klingons and the Federation again, which is a big deal. I get,
Sure.
Right? So it seems that was enough, I guess, urgency.
Again, her message to the Enterprise was dangerous situation on Kajitar 4. Resources of Enterprise critical, anti-Federation threat. I mean, I get maybe she was trying to be vague so that she didn't give it up on the comms, but again, it doesn't seem like there was nothing imminent. Like, we're going to start this war in 3 days if you're not here to stop it, right? Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. We see the crew finally gets to Kajitar 4. They meet up with La'an. La'an mentions she's found Oriana's parents. Oriana is the little girl that she was saving from the Gorn. Her parents there was an explosion at the mine they were working at. They got ion exposure from the mine and they are sick. They're in the med tent. Mbenga mentions that ion exposures, you can't get that from a dilithium mine, but probably from proton torpedoes. Chapel and Mbenga then tour the tents. They're going to go check on Oriana's parents because they are obviously both doctors. The tents, it looks very much like a refugee camp. It's out in the open, and there's clearly a lot of people that are hurt. And as they're touring through this, medical tent or medical section, some Klingons show up and basically, I sense kidnap them and tell them that we could use your services and drag them away at gunpoint. And then it cuts back to La'an and Spock and Uhura, and they are at a weapons meeting. Well, I should say La'an is at a weapons meeting, and Spock and Uhura are basically spying.
So sorry, before we move on, can I just say, we ended season 1 with these big things happening. La'an's going to go off with she's taking a leave of absence from Starfleet. She's going to go off with this girl to try to find her parents, and it's this big deal because she's leaving the ship. And now we've basically resolved that one episode in.
Oh, not even one episode. We're like 25 minutes into the episode,
we
and
see
it's
her.
done.
She's like, "Oh yeah, I totally found her parents. No problem. Here I'm done. I'm good. I'm coming."
And
back.
her parents are alive. I mean, I suppose they're sick, but I mean, it's not like
Found
I have to
them,
adopt
we're
this
good.
kid or anything. Yeah.
Yep. No, everything's just taken care of. We're fine. And Pike has gone off on his little personal leave in this episode. I'm sure episode 2 is just going to be Pike gets the lawyer to agree to take on La'an's case, or Una's case. Sorry. And that's going to be episode 2, and everything's going to be wrapped up in a neat little package. And episode 3, we're back, Strange New Worlds time again, baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is a fantastic summary, because that was a lot of, yeah, right. I mean, it was just completely wrapped up like it was no big deal.
I don't begrudge them having tried to do these bigger things, and I also don't begrudge that they clearly just want to do an episode of the week show. So just do that. Don't tie yourself down with these big plot changes that you then just undo immediately, because that's not really the show you want to do.
Yeah, it feels messy, like it wasn't supposed to go that way, or maybe the actors were maybe not, like their contracts weren't signed or something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
To have them back immediately. I really like what Stranger Things did in season 4, where all the characters were separated, like to shake things up a bit, and they could have done something that, that's kind of what I was hoping for, like having a longer arc, trying to get the crew back together, sort of
right.
thing.
But that's, I think that works in Stranger Things because it's in season 4. We've done 3 seasons already, which basically had the same formula every time. And they clearly were like, all right, we got to mix this up a little bit. If we just do the same thing again, people are going to get bored with this. So let's shake it up. Yeah, I don't know, for season 2, you really needed to mess with it too much. The formula is what we're looking for more of at this point. So
yeah, that's true. They didn't need to. Yeah. So
they could eat. I mean, if they had just stretched it out like literally one episode,
right? Yeah,
like maybe they spend the first episode like tracking her down, and then in the second episode they go and save the day, and then they're all reunited. That's fine, but it's this is literally not even halfway through the episode, and like you said, that plot line is wrapped up. Like it wasn't much of a cliffhanger.
Big deal that she's leaving the Enterprise, and then the whole reason she's going happens entirely off screen.
Right.
She's like, oh, yep, nope, I took care of that. I'm good.
And it didn't even sound like they didn't explain it, but it didn't even sound like it was hard. It was basically like, yeah, found her parents, we're good.
Up in the Galactic Yellow pages, and that was that. Oh, well.
All right, so we see La'an is doing this weapons deal with, what was the guys? We're assuming this is Greynax. It's a Klingon, and she basically says that I only have half of the weapons, that you were expecting, and oh, by the way, I want double the price. In the Klingon, so there's 3 Klingons there, maybe 4, and La'an, so it's 4 on 1, and she's like, playing
and she's
hardball
bluffing
with
them
these
because
guys.
she doesn't have the ability to get a hold of all these weapons she said she has. So,
and he was like, "Oh, I'm basically like I'm just going to kill you because it's 4 on 1." And she pulls out, whatever, some sort of like fancy LED that makes grenades or power up sounds, and gets him to back down by saying she has an antimatter detonation switch, which she later says isn't even a thing that exists.
Right, it sure sounds like it.
But
I
hey, whatever. the Klingons basically, they're like, all right, fine, I'll pay you double, whatever. But Uhura does mention, because she's off, her and Spock are behind something, spying on this discussion, and Uhura mentions that as a linguist, she notices that this is an obscure Klingon dialect, She may even have said what it was. But what we're led to believe later in the episode is that these are Klingon like separatists, and they're essentially an offshoot of the Klingons. So which I think is what explains why they look a little bit different. Is that they are perhaps some sort of different faction of Klingons that we have not seen before, I'm assuming. And once that's wrapped up and they get a little more information, Spock decides, he's like, okay, now that we know what's going on here with the weapons and that what the Klingons are trying to do, like, let's beam up. And he calls the Enterprise and he says, Chief J, can you beam us up? And did you guys, am I the only one that thought Chief J looked like he was 14?
Yeah, looked real young.
Like, he would look really, really young. And my first question is, well, where's Chief Kyle? Not that he had a huge part in the first season, but he had one job, and that was doing transporters, and he was basically in every transporter scene, but now they've replaced him.
They went out of their way to establish that character, and now apparently he's been promoted or something.
Maybe he's got a 14-year-old intern or something.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, how old is this actor that's playing Chief J? 21, 22.
Okay, so in TV age, that's literally 14, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
He looks really young. I mean, not that I care that he's young. It just kind of felt weird that you've got whoever this person is very young running the transporters. Maybe Chief Kyle's still on shore leave, or maybe that's what they're going for with this, is that the crew isn't all there. Anyway.
Yeah.
We cut down to the surface, and Mbenga and Chapel, who have now been, kidnapped by these Klingons, and they are being led into this cave where this is what we're told is the dilithium mine, and there is a huge cave, like it has largely been excavated. And I think one of the characters says it's been decades of dilithium mining to get a cave this large. And we see a Federation ship being built in the cave. It looks, Enterprise-esque. It has a saucer section and some nacelles, so it's very clearly a Federation ship. And they're like, well, how did that ship get in here? The opening to this cave is not enough, that you could get it in here. And they determine that it's been built there.
Yeah.
So whatever's going on in this cave, they've been, constructing this ship in place, sort of like a ship in a bottle. Which might explain why there was an explosion in the mine with the torpedoes that, poisoned Oriana's parents. So there was probably some sort of mishap when they were attempting to arm this ship.
Yeah. And they're building it in a big cave with a bunch of separatists who probably don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, right, with Federation technology. Oh, I guess that explains why the Klingons wanted all the Federation weapons. They wanted this to look realistic.
Yeah.
Because ultimately the Klingons' plan is they're going to make what looks like a Federation ship and then use that Federation ship to attack a Klingon ship, which will then start the war up because they're in contested space to begin with. So it's a I think actually doesn't they say that in the next season they actually call it a false flag, where they're going to use the ship as a fake to start this war up.
Yeah, Spock refers to it as a false flag operation.
We cut to the interior of the ship's medical bay, and we see the Klingons have pulled Mbenga and Chapel in a little bit farther. They want them to treat a couple Klingons that are in the medical bay, probably after this explosion. And Mbenga's line, he's got a tricorder over this, the back of one of these Klingons, and his line is, fortunately, your dermal system is redundant. And your dermal system is your skin. So why would Klingons have redundant skin? But whatever.
They're built for combat, man. They've got redundant.
I guess that makes sense. I just thought it was kind of weird. Like, I mean, you have redundant lungs and redundant kidneys, but redundant skin. Like, all right.
Hey, they got armor.
And Mbenga, actually, the Klingons, kind of breaking Mbenga's balls. He's like, "How do you know how to treat Klingons?" And Mbenga says, "Oh, I treated Klingons before on Jagal." And the Klingon doesn't believe him. He's like, "No, you weren't there. If you were, you'd be dead." And Mbenga responds, "Do you remember, Jagal? There was so much blood in the air that the rain turned red."
Yeah.
And Mbenga kind of has this like faraway look on his eyes, so like he clearly has some PTSD.
He gets the 1,000-yard stare big time.
Yeah. And I think this is the first like real explanation we have of Mbenga having any sort of military background.
Yeah,
right?
this has not come up before, and you'd think it might have, but yeah, clearly he's got some PTSD.
I think I think Chapel does as well, right? She just maybe handles it a little bit better.
Yeah, maybe.
So Chapel has, used her tricorder or whatever and has detected that there are torpedoes on the ship that they're on. So we're getting a little more explanation of why there was that explosion. And they're realizing how much of a threat this ship is going to be. And they decide that they want to get to the bridge to alert the Enterprise as quickly as possible so they can come up with some sort of solution to this. And they're on this sick bay, I guess, and they're trying to figure out. They're surrounded by Klingons, and they're like, "What are we gonna do?" And Mbenga pulls out this vial of green liquid, and he says,
"Dude, you wait! You didn't know that Starfleet officers just always carry around Captain America super soldier serum with them?"
Oh, I just assumed it was Hulk serum because it's great. But yeah, right.
Yeah,
exactly.
whatever. Yeah, it's standard issue.
It's Mbenga who says, this can help us get there if it's important enough. And then he hands Chapel this vial. And she looks at him and she says, "Do you ever not carry it?" So she immediately knows what this is, which, we, the audience, don't know. And I've never seen it come up before. But I think the point is that they were essentially in the war together. And this was a thing either that they were given or that they invented or whatever that they would use. And it's, probably adrenaline and whatever. And they take it, both of them, they inject their Hulk serum into their shoulders or whatever. Their pupils get really big, and then they basically go Wolvie Berserk style and just destroy 6 Klingons, right?
Right. So the implication here is that Mbenga, and Chapel got into some serious scrapes in the war with the Klingons, and were some kind of, I don't know, were they a special forces squad or something? I doubt the rank and file have this crazy go juice. And then not only that, but then Mbenga just constantly carries around a couple of vials of this stuff with him ever since, just in case he has to fight some Klingons. So,
well, that's a good point because Chapel must know that he carries this because her line is, "Do you ever not carry it?" So he's a doctor, he's on the Enterprise,
but he is ready to throw down if those Klingons start some trouble, man. And she at one point even says to him, "Hey, the war's over," and he's like, "How can it be over?"
Right?
So it's just let me at them Klingons.
Well, I mean, it works because they pretty much destroy a bunch of Klingons in this sick bay, and then kind of out in this hallway too. And they leave one alive, and Mbenga's interrogating him, trying to figure out where the bridge is. And Chapel actually has to stop him basically from killing this Klingon. And she yells at him. She says, "Joseph, Joseph," which, as far as I'm aware, is the first time we've heard Mbenga's first name. I don't remember.
No, we've heard it before.
Okay.
But I don't know if we've heard her call him Joseph before, but we've heard his name.
So the Klingon basically says there's 30 soldiers on this ship. Mbenga's trying to figure out how many, how much resistance they're going to have. He says there's 30 soldiers on the ship, and whatever the transponders on bay, bridge 14 or something like that. And Mbenga just straight up just punches him and knocks him out.
Right.
And so Mbenga and Chapel are going to reprogram the transponder to send a distress call to the Enterprise to let them know that something's going on the ship. And right about then, some more Klingons show up, and they open this access hatch in the floor, and there's kind of a weird camera flip as they
this was
jump
really
through
weird.
it.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell if this was supposed to be they just did some superpower stuff and that's why it looked like that, or if it was just the director having some fun with the camera or what. But it was weird. I don't know. I still
I'm glad I did, because I had watched it twice, trying to figure out if I missed something. It started out they flipped it upside down. I'm like, oh, they're going to shut the gravity off or something, right?
Right.
And they flip the camera. They fall through this hole, but they fall up, and then they land on the floor, which is really the ceiling, and then it unflips. It was just a weird shot.
I think it was just the director trying to make it look interesting, but yeah, it was strange.
It looked cool. Don't get me wrong. It just didn't feel like it made sense with the. Did you get anything else out of that shot, Jason?
No, yeah, I was confused just the same.
Okay. We see some more, M'Benga and Chapel in, this new hallway, I guess, and they're kicking some more Klingon ass. We see M'Benga in slow motion, like walking down the hall, looking like a total badass, which was actually pretty cool.
Though, not just looking like a badass, like he's like, I want to bathe in Klingon blood, man.
Yeah, right. That's a good point. I mean, he was in it. He was channeling his inner. Yeah, right. They start to, the juice starts to run out for Chapel. At one point, M'Benga has to rescue her. He full on body slams this Klingon to rescue Chapel. And, they run down the hall and they're being pursued by some more Klingons. And Chapel has to literally hotwire the door.
Yeah.
Like two exposed wires held together that sparks to close the door. Right. I was like, come on.
Hey. And then, these doors, these Klingons are just about to get into the room and the door's closed. And M'Benga's like, oh, man. Like, he looks disappointed that she got the door to close.
Right about then, the ship starts to take off. And so, like, M'Benga and Chapel kind of lose their balance as the ship angles itself a little bit. So the audience is alerted that the ship is now in motion. We cut back to the Enterprise bridge just as a Klingon battlecruiser jumps in. And the Enterprise is, they're off sensors, I guess. I think it's Ortega says that she's hiding, in like an ice field with a bunch of space junk around. And I think one of the characters says, is that going to be enough to keep us off their sensors? And she says, I've hidden from enough Klingons to know this is going to be fine. So they are sort of playing it. They're laying low until they know what's going on this planet. Because I don't think at this point that they've received the distress call from Chapel yet.
And I'm kind of getting the impression that maybe Ortega served in the war as well. Because she mentions that, she's hidden from a bunch of Klingons before. So maybe she's been in combat with them too. Yeah. So
do you think, is that what the weird like finger under the eye thing that M'Benga does to La'an when he first sees her? Is that like some military thing maybe?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, That's the thing. Like, this is also out of left field. That all of a sudden these guys have these like crazy war backstories that we've never heard anything about. I don't know.
Okay. We see the fake Federation ship emerge from the atmosphere of this planet of Kajtar 4. Apparently it's too far away from this Klingon battlecruiser. They have not picked it up yet. The bridge there, they read the launch of a Crossfield class ship, which I've not heard of Crossfield before. Have you been?
No. And it looks different. It looks different than any other. I think it's a unique design for this episode.
Sure. They basically say like, oh, this ship is totally outclassed by this Klingon battlecruiser.
They build the Enterprise, and then they maybe build another one,
and then throw away the plans and start over.
And they throw it away, and they just build a different one. So we saw this Crossfield class ship. We'll never see Crossfield class again. We'll never see that ship. Well, that ship got blown up, so we definitely won't see that one again. But yeah.
The whatever this Crossfield class ship is en route traveling towards the Klingon ship because it's going to attack it and start this war. The Enterprise does not know what's going on with this ship. The ship has just appeared, essentially. And Uhura reads the transponders that Chapel had set up. And she reads them. She's like, something's off with those transponders. And she thinks about it for a second. And then she says that they are broadcasting Morse 2, which I assume is the sequel to Morse code. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I saw that.
She specifically says Morse 2, not Morse code. Right. Not like, all right, Morse code as a sequel.
It's space Morse.
There you go. And the Morse 2 code says Enterprise destroy this ship. So they're kind of confused. Like, wait a second, this ship just showed up out of nowhere. Now we're getting this weird message on this weird transponder to blow it up. They're trying to figure out, what's going on. So I think a couple of the bridge members, they have a conversation that if the Klingons even see this Federation ship, that it will restart this Klingon Federation war that has just ended. And especially because this is hotly contested territory. Oh, there was a mention earlier I think it was from Admiral April, where he talks about Kajatar 4. It is a shared ownership between the Federation and the Klingons, and the Klingons get it for 30 days, and then the Federation gets it for 30 days, and then the Klingons get it for 30. Like it bounces back and forth like a kid with divorced parents, which seemed kind of weird.
There's no way that would ever be a thing that would exist in a treaty. It just be like trying to make that work would be absolute insanity. There's no way that they would ever agree to that.
How would the logistics work? Like you get all your people off the planet.
Right. And
then everybody comes back. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing that if you think about it for more than 2 seconds, you're like, wait a minute, how would that even work? Yeah.
There's mention that the extremists are using this Federation ship as a false flag to attack the Klingons, so that the word false flag is used in this. So they're going to, basically, poke the Klingons and make it look like the Federation did it with the intent of restarting this war. Enterprise decides to chase the fake Federation ship, but Spock refuses to fire on it yet. The fake Federation ship is actually firing at the Enterprise as it pursues them, but Ortegas does some fancy spin flying, like she's like full on putting the Enterprise through its paces to avoid these torpedoes, which, I mean, it looks cool. It just doesn't seem realistic for a big, gigantic ship like that. But
I didn't buy it. Again, it did look cool, but I didn't really buy it. The ship is getting closer and closer to the Klingon, so Spock's time to destroy the ship is rapidly running out. And he has not heard from M'Benga and Chapel, and he really doesn't want to shoot at the ship until he knows where they are. Ultimately, he decides he tells him to shoot, and he actually closes his eyes and cries a little bit, as he gives the order to shoot at this ship. He doesn't even know that M'Benga and Chapel are necessarily on this ship. But well, I mean, he's got reason to believe that they are.
Yeah, okay. They destroy this fake ship, no problem. In the meantime, M'Benga and Chapel are basically on this ship. They're looking for, EV suits or an escape pod or something they can get out of the ship before it gets blown up, because they've just told the Enterprise to blow it up. They find a helmet and a jetpack, but they don't find an EV suit. They basically decide that they're going to just jump out this airlock. I think M'Benga says, we have 60 seconds to freeze to death, but don't worry, it'll only take 15 seconds for us to pass out.
Yeah.
So they jump straight out into space.
Which, again, is, yeah, no. You're not going to live for 60 seconds in the vacuum of space, but...
Right at the last minute, they detect, the transponder as part of the jetpack or the helmet, and they're able to beam M'Benga and Chapel semi-frozen back onto the Enterprise. Spock runs to the transporter room and does CPR on Chapel while crying, the saddest CPR of all time. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a good moment between, Spock and Chapel, but number one, he's the captain. They're in the middle of this fight. Like, shouldn't he stay on the bridge? Like, he has people to do that, right? Like, send somebody else.
I'll give him that one.
Okay. Spoiler alert, everyone survives. M'Benga and Chapel survive the space whatever that they were doing.
Yeah.
Barely, but they do. And let's see, the Enterprise gets a quick call or a hail from the Klingons.
Is it quick? Because Spock has time to run down to sickbay or to the transport room, I guess, and then perform CPR on Chapel. And then once she's conscious again, it's like, oh, hey, Lieutenant, the Klingons are hailing us. So presumably on the Klingon ship, their sensor officers, hey, Captain, a Federation ship just flew out of the asteroid field. Oh, there's another one chasing them. Oh, it just blew up the other ship. We really should do something about it. Do you want to hail them? And he's like, no. Let me finish my gawk. I'll get back to you. Just chill. It's fine. Like we'll get to this. Just hold on. And then he takes a few minutes to finish up whatever he was doing. He's like, okay, now go ahead and hail them. Like,
So-
or their sensors are really good, and he's like, hang on, I can tell these two people are having a moment.
Right.
So let's not interrupt this. Let's wait until after she's cool.
The
and then
timing,
we'll hail
the
them.
time, his timing is flawless because
Yeah.
they hail and Spock is back on the bridge. You know, Spock basically gives him the story about the separatists and the fake ship, and he was coming to attack you, and blah blah blah. The Klingon is not believing it because it doesn't make any sense, honestly.
Right.
I mean, it's a long shot.
Yeah.
You know, they go back and forth for a little bit, and basically Spock convinces him, like, hey, I'm a Vulcan, I don't lie. And he says, you know, how about we settle our differences over a barrel of blood wine? And the Klingon's like, yeah, all right, sounds good to me.
Yep. It's all good.
Yeah, the next scene is them down on the planet, and, you know, essentially that same table that La'an was sitting at earlier, and they're all sitting around drinking blood wine, and the Klingons and humans are like they're just great friends all of a sudden because they're just having a big old party. So he went from like, OMG, there are two Federation ships that are not supposed to be in this space at all to, okay, we're cool and we're friends in a short amount of time.
All it takes is a barrel of blood wine, man.
It really brings people together.
Really got to wonder then why Starfleet doesn't just keep a barrel of blood wine on every Starfleet vessel.
And just do face-to-face meetings all the time.
In case you run into the
all it
Klingons, just call them, hey, look, guys, I know you're pissed. You're Klingons. You want to fight. We got blood wine.
all it takes.
Let's do it.
Pelia and Spock are on the planet. I mean, essentially, I guess the whole crew is now on the planet. They're basically...
Yeah, everybody's down getting into the barrel of blood wine.
And they are discussing Lanthanites, which, again, is the race that Pelia is. And Spock mentions that the Lanthanites lived on Earth with humans undetected until the 22nd century. So Lanthanites clearly look human. I mean, they could pass for a human visually.
Right.
And at least what we're learning about this race is that, well, we know they live a really long time because Pelia says hasn't flown a ship in over 100 years. So we don't know exactly how old they are, but they're pretty old. And that apparently they lived on Earth. So they were, chameleoning while they were on Earth for a while. So I think this is clearly set up for her character, like that we're going to get a little bit more of her backstory.
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. What I don't understand is why, they don't have to, not everything has to be about the old shows. I don't expect them to make everything a callback, but you already have a race of people who live a long time, look just like humans, and lived amongst humans in the past, which is the Elorians, which is what Whoopi Goldberg's character Guinan is in Next Generation. So I don't know why we're introducing this whole other race that's basically the same as that. I don't get that.
I didn't know that's what Guinan was. Interesting.
Yeah, they did whole episodes in Next Generation where they go back in time and Guinan's living on Earth as a human. And anyway, it just, I was like, you guys already have this in your canon. Why would you make another one? So are the Lutherians, whatever they are, Lanthanites are the Lanthanites and the Elorians, like, do they have like a rivalry going? Like,
maybe we'll find out it's the same race and it's just two different names. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I don't know.
Pelia tells Spock that Spock's mother, was one of the first people she came out to. So again, they were living, incognito as part of the human race. And Pelia and Spock's mom were apparently friends. And she says, you want to know the worst thing about living almost forever? And Spock gives that, stock answer of, watching all your loved ones die.
Right.
And Pelia's like, no, it's boredom.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Which also explains why she wanted to go on this mission, right? Like, she's been teaching at Starfleet for 100 years. She hasn't been on a ship. She's like, I could use a little action. Sure, why not?
Right. Yeah, I mean, at some point, people dying is probably like, just, you've been through it so many times. You're like, yeah, this is what people do, whatever. But yeah, I'm bored. I totally get that.
You know what's really shitty? Yeah, nothing to do.
Yeah.
Let's go steal a ship.
Right. I get it.
Yeah. That we see Admiral April and Spock. The Enterprise has returned to Starbase One, and Spock is basically getting chewed out by Admiral April for stealing this ship. At one point, Spock tells the Admiral, he's like, "Can you lower your voice?"
Right.
And my first thought was like, "Whoa, that's really ballsy. Like, you're telling this guy to like tone it down while he's chewing you out for you just." And then Robert April goes, "Oh, are you hungover?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's even worse." Like,
right.
He's like, "You're too. I know that I'm about to lose my job, but if you're going to yell at me, can you do a little quieter because I'm so hungover?"
Spock's like, "Hey, look. I know I did a mutiny, but it all worked out. Like,
I
what's
stopped
the
a
big
war.
Deal? Why are you so uptight about this, man? Come on, chill out."
Ultimately, the Admiral just says, "All right, well, no big deal." And his line is, "Consider that Klingon hangover your punishment."
Yeah,
Like,
there are no consequences. Zero. Nothing.
And he does
like. It's not even like, okay, next time the Enterprise is in space dock, you're denied shore leave. Nothing.
Yeah. He does say his line is, "Next time it'll be your commission." So it's like you get a one mutiny, get out of jail free card, but after that you're done.
Yeah. Wouldn't he have to like power wash the ship or something?
Yeah, you would sure think.
Something. There's nothing. There's no consequences to this at all.
We see a quick scene. Chapel is recovering in sick bay, and Spock is there watching her sleep creepily,
crying while he does so.
And yes, and Mbenga walks in, and he's like, "Don't worry, she'll be fine." And Spock cries some more, and he says, "I have no words for what I feel."
Yeah. So the whole, like, is he going to be with Chapel? Is he going to go for that, or is he going to be with T'Pring? The whole big, big question that, again, another of these big questions that season 1 presented to us. Nope, we're answering it in the first episode. He's all in on Chapel.
Dude, what is Spock's deal, man? I mean, like, both of the chicks that are they're number one, they're both smoking hot. Number two, they're both like totally into him, and he doesn't know what to do. Like, it's a tough spot to be in, man.
It's not logical.
Yes.
He's got to play his emo music on his flute.
Oh, that's
Figure
true.
it out.
I mean, we do know he ends up married to T'Pring, right?
No, in the original series, he goes back to get married, and the wedding doesn't actually happen.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Basically, she sets up this whole elaborate scheme to break up the wedding because she doesn't actually want to marry him.
Oh, I'll have to watch that. Okay, I don't remember my Spock history.
Go watch Amok Time. It's a good episode.
Okay. I guess the final scene we see is the admirals, Robert April, that was just chewing out Spock, and another admiral. I don't think we know who it is. They basically discuss letting Spock get off easy. After they shut down the comms, they're having an internal admiral discussion, and they're like, well, essentially we had to let him off easy. And the line is, Robert April's line is, he just kept us from potentially having to defend two fronts at the same time, even if he doesn't know it. And there's a slow zoom in on this map that they're looking at. And the map says, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, Galdonter, which I've never heard of. Does that sound familiar to you, Ben?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but the important takeaway is it's the Gorn are back.
Yes. In fact, it says, like in red letters, it says probable object identification, and then it pauses, and then it fades in and says Gorn attack ship. Yeah. So yes, clearly the Gorn are back, or will be back.
So Admiral April's position is that we might be in a war, so things are getting real serious. So we're going to need all the officers that ignore our orders and commit mutiny that we can get our hands on.
Right. So, I mean, what are they saying here? So the line is he kept us just potentially having to defend two fronts at the same time. So they're saying that the Gorn are essentially probably just about to start a war, and we just narrowly avoided war with the Klingons again? Is that what they're implying?
Yeah, that's what he's saying. They prevented this war from starting again with the Klingons, which is good because we're probably going to be in a war with the Gorn soon.
Gotcha.
But again, the idea that there are no consequences for this is just absolutely
Totally insane.
Completely unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's horrible writing. I'm sorry.
They should have, there should have been some consequence. I mean, even if it was a slap on the, like there should have been something. Cause the whole thing is, your punishment is the Klingon hangover. Like, come on, get out.
Yeah. Or have
Whatever.
it be that like they sent him out there, but told him not to engage with the Klingons. And then, Spock, decides to go farther than he was told to. And he kind of defies his orders and, then okay, fine. Maybe he gets a slap on the wrist or whatever, but he literally steals a ship.
Right.
And goes off to a place where they told him you cannot go there because you could start a war.
I mean, it would have been one thing if he had just stolen the ship, but he specifically went against orders from an admiral.
Right.
Like, right. There's just a lot of...
He would be in the brig. And
Right.
so would all of the other officers.
Anyone that went along. Right. 100%.
Yeah. So, this was just crazy.
Well, okay, devil's advocate. He did prevent a scheme to actually.
It doesn't
create a
matter
war.
it doesn't matter.
And this is the cliche, like, the rogue cop does so much like damage, and the admiral has to like begrudgingly you'll get him next time or whatever, but. It's just a cliche like type of right. It's really
it is
not
100%
egregious thing in my opinion.
I'm sorry. It's just there's so many other ways they could have written this that didn't make it.
They could have done a lot of just little things, like it doesn't have to be like he's sent to the brig or he's decommissioned. Like they could have done something other than I hope that hangover really is hard on.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So
yeah. Okay.
Real quick, the episode. So that's the end of the episode. It fades to black, and then there is a cool. There's text on screen that says, "For Nichelle, who was first through the door and showed us the stars, hailing frequencies forever open," which is obviously I don't know what the word is. Shout out, homage, I guess, to Nichelle Nichols, the original Uhura. I thought that was cool that they gave her. I don't know when she died. I guess I could look it up.
It's been a while, but I think this is the first new Star Trek thing that's been made since she died.
That was going to be my question: is did she? Is why?
I believe that's the case. I thought it was really cool. I wish she had a better episode dedicated to her. I thought I thought she deserved better.
She died July 30th of 2022, so I guess it hasn't been as long as I thought. So this must have been the first thing that they filmed post her death.
I think it is. Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was cool that they gave her a little nod. So
that's very cool.
And that's it. That's legit. We get credits after that, and So was it a great episode? No. Did I hate it? No, absolutely not. I would watch this episode 100 times over, like half of the crap I've watched on Discovery, man.
Oh, dude, no, it's way better than Discovery, but I think this is weaker than any of the episodes in season 1.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah.
I don't feel like it really advanced the plot much. I mean, if anything, it kind of went backwards a little bit because the whole La'an thing is just immediately resolved.
Yep, it's over. No problem.
And, I mean, maybe this is set up for a potential human-Klingon war, maybe. I mean, so they're giving us that backstory, but...
I think it was just, hey, let's have a little fun romp with the Klingons and set up more Gorn stuff and tie up all these... we set up all these plot lines that we're apparently not going to do in season 2, so let's just cap them right now. I don't know. It just, again, the whole thing felt really lazy to me.
Yeah, it definitely felt forced. It felt both forced and lazy in different parts. So
I've said nothing but negative things so far. I will say one good thing: it looks great. It looks fantastic.
Yes, I agree.
The costumes, the effects, all of it looks good. That whole scene on the planet with the Klingons, and there's just all these weird props and stuff. All that's practical effects that were really cool. whoever, the production design team on this show is second to none. Everything looks great.
Nothing in this episode looked like it was out of Hollywood. Like
No.
there are definitely episodes of TNG or Voyager or Deep Space Nine where you can tell like they just, took a beer bottle and spray painted it and put it in Quark's bar, right? Because they don't have the budget.
TNG was on the verge of cancellation for most of its run. It never had any money. They're clearly spending bucks on Strange New Worlds, which is great to see.
Absolutely. So that's the one thing I took away from Discovery too. Is like clearly that's their flagship, or at least it was. They wanted it to be. There's a ton of money in just the visuals of that show, and it looks amazing. It's just everything else about that show sucks.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate. So
no.
Anyway,
and
so this
again,
is
they made costumes, for all the crew to go down and blend in. Those were all one-offs that are never going to get made again, and they look great.
The Klingons looked good. I was a little bit worried about the different Klingons, thinking they were going to, change that up, but
yeah, everybody who's has anything to do with the look of the show should get a big pat on the back because it looks fantastic.
Actually, it is worth noting that the Klingon the Klingon captain they end up drinking, blood wine with, he looks more like a traditional Klingon. His forehead ridges look more Worf-like, so. Just again to visually differentiate them between the Klingons and the separatist Klingons. So, they do sort of resolve that difference, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
It's still good to be watching Star Trek, but man, I hope they raise the bar a little bit on the plotting because that was a travesty.
Jason, any last words?
No, it was a very uninteresting episode. Just didn't have a lot of meat to it or substance to any of the plot points. It's very lazy, like you said, and the fact that the Palea is that there's an existing race that they could have used that's almost identical in description, like you were saying. That kind of blows my mind. It seems super lazy not to reach into that. I mean, we may discover that they're the same or something, but it's just why?
I consider myself a pretty big Star Trek nerd, and I not only did I not know that Guinan was an Illyrian, but I also did not know that they lived with humans. So I consider myself educated.
Go out and watch some TNG again, my friend.
I guess so. We did. I did finish. We watched all of Voyager, me and Roland, and half of ANG. And we started Deep Space Nine, so we've been watching a little Deep Space Nine.
You watched half of Angie, or half of Angie watched Voyager?
She tunes in, a little bit. I've been more watching it with Roland, but she will tolerate it, which is surprising because she doesn't normally like science fiction. So, but I've been watching a lot of Star Trek, and
so is she watching it with one eye closed? How does that?
Well, she doesn't like I'm saying. I will watch an episode with Roland, and she may or may not.
Undangling Modifier Patrol.
What else? Yeah, I don't know. Deep Space Nine's still good. Voyager's good.
Yeah, and Strange New Worlds is good. Just this episode's, every Star Trek has some stinkers, and this is one of them. Doesn't mean the show's bad. Just this episode was. I give it a 3 out of 10.
Oh wow! Are we doing ratings?
We did last season, so why not?
I'll give it a 5 out of 10. I mean, I was just happy to see the characters again because I've been watching so much crap lately that I'll give it the benefit of the doubt of just being characters that I like.
I give it 3 Klingons that M'Benga beat to death with his hands out of 10.
Jason,
I want to go lower. I'm gonna give it 2 just to top you. And the fact that it's the season opener is makes it much more disappointing. And not having kind of the fan favorite Captain Pike in there, and just some really odd, lazy choices, to have the on thing tied up immediately. I mean, yeah, like you've said, it's such a odd, uninteresting, return to this series that everybody's really looking forward to. So yeah,
maybe Anson Mount got a copy of the script and was like, you know what, guys, I'm going to sit this one out.
Yeah, maybe.
The rest of these are great, but this one sucks, so I'm going across the galaxy.
Write me out of this one. I'm not doing this one.